On the evening of December 30th, 1905, a typical winter night that promised nothing more than the quiet comfort of home. Former Governor Frank Steunenberg had just returned from a day at his office, pulling his coat tighter against the chill as he walked the final steps to his front gate. He reached for the latch, a mundane, everyday action, when the silence of the night was violently torn apart by a deafening, earth-shattering roar. A massive explosion ripped through the gate, instantly transforming the quiet street into a scene of carnage, smoke, and chaos. The force of the blast was so immense it could be heard for miles, and when the dust settled, the body of the former governor lay broken and lifeless in the snow, the victim of a meticulously planned and politically charged assassination that would ignite a national firestorm and lead to what was immediately dubbed the trial of the century. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. Also coming soon to Substack. Frank Steunenberg was a man whose political career was defined by a single brutal conflict. Serving as Idaho's fourth governor from 1897 to 1901, he was a Democrat who initially enjoyed support from the state's powerful labor unions. However, his legacy was irrevocably stained by the Coeur d'Alene labor disputes. The mining region was a hotbed of conflict between the mine owners and the Western Federation of Miners, WFM, a radical and militant union. The tension culminated in 1899 when a WFM-led mob dynamited a mill, leading to the deaths of several non-union workers. In response to the escalating violence, Governor Steunenberg made the fateful decision to declare martial law. He called in federal troops, who, under his authority, began a campaign of mass arrests. Hundreds of miners, regardless of their involvement in the violence, were rounded up and confined to makeshift prisons infamously known as bullpens, where conditions were harsh and inhumane. This act of state-sanctioned repression cemented Steunenberg's image as a traitor to the working class and a tool of the mine owners, earning him the undying hatred of the WFM and its most radical members. The man who would carry out the assassination was a drifter, a professional criminal and a paid operative of the WFM named Harry Orchard, though he was born Albert Horsley. Orchard was a man of many aliases and a long history of violence, including arson, theft, and murder. He was a self-confessed dynamite fiend, a man who had been involved in a string of bombings and assassinations targeting mine owners and anti-union figures across the western states. He was a cold, calculating killer who saw his actions not just as a job, but as a necessary part of the class war being waged in the American West. Orchard had been stalking Steunenberg for weeks, meticulously planning the attack. He chose the governor's home in Caldwell, a quiet town where the former politician felt safe. The bomb itself was a crude but powerful device, a charge of dynamite concealed in a small box, rigged to the front gate with a tripwire mechanism. The design was simple and brutally effective, ensuring that the victim would trigger the explosion the moment they opened the gate to enter their property. It was a final, deadly act of revenge, delivered 6 years after the events that had fueled the hatred. The immediate aftermath of the blast was pandemonium. Local authorities quickly secured the scene, but the nature of the crime, the assassination of a former governor by a bomb, demanded a national response. Within days, the famed Pinkerton Detective Agency was on the case, led by the legendary James McParland, a man famous for infiltrating the Molly Maguires decades earlier. McParland quickly identified Harry Orchard as the prime suspect and, through relentless interrogation and a promise of leniency, managed to extract a full confession. Orchard's confession was a bombshell that implicated the highest echelons of the Western Federation of Miners. He claimed that the assassination, along with a dozen other murders and bombings, had been ordered and financed by the union's leadership: William Big Bill Haywood, the union's secretary-treasurer; Charles Moyer, the president; and George Pettibone, a businessman and union sympathizer. The three men were promptly kidnapped from Colorado by Pinkerton agents, illegally extradited to Idaho, and charged with conspiracy to murder Steunenberg. The ensuing legal battle, which began in 1907, became a national spectacle, pitting the forces of capital against the forces of labor. The prosecution, led by the brilliant William Borah, later a U.S. Senator, presented Orchard as their star witness, a self-confessed mass murderer whose testimony was the linchpin of their case. The defense was helmed by the most famous lawyer in America, Clarence Darrow, a staunch defender of the working class and a master of courtroom drama. Darrow's strategy was to discredit Orchard, painting him as a pathological liar and a desperate man who was trading his soul for a reduced sentence. He argued that the entire case was a conspiracy by the mine owners and the Pinkertons to destroy the WFM and its leaders. The trial was a grueling 5-month affair, filled with sensational testimony, political rhetoric, and intense public scrutiny. The fate of the labor movement in the West seemed to hang in the balance. In the end, the jury, unconvinced by the testimony of a confessed killer and swayed by Darrow's powerful defense of the labor cause, returned a verdict of not guilty for William Haywood. The charges against Moyer and Pettibone were subsequently dropped. Harry Orchard, the man who actually planted the bomb, was tried separately, convicted and sentenced to death. However, due to his cooperation and confession, his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. The legacy of the Steunenberg assassination and the Haywood trial is complex. It was a pivotal moment in American labor history, a clash that exposed the deep-seated animosity between industrial capital and organized labor. While Haywood walked free, the assassination itself was a stark reminder of the violence that permeated the class struggle in the early 20th century. Harry Orchard, the killer, lived out his days in the Idaho State Penitentiary, becoming a model prisoner, a convert to Seventh-day Adventism, and even writing an autobiography, dying in 1954 after nearly 50 years behind bars. The crime remains a chilling testament to the deadly consequences of political and industrial warfare. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.